So ultimately with negotiating, I come from a poker background, and in poker, one of the biggest things you can do is making your opponent make a really tough decision, right? So in poker, generally you want to be the aggressor, you want to be the one that's pushing the action. You don't want to be the one that's calling or just going to showdown, basically, which means that you're showing all your cards, right? Like, you want to be the one that's pushing the action. There's more equity in pushing the action. So in real estate, I actually think it's very, very similar in that, so if I'm negotiating back and forth, we want to be the one that's coming up to our highest and best first, right? So we want to be the one that is making the other party make a decision over a small percentage on a deal that maybe it's a little lower than they would have wanted to go, or it's a little, as a buyer, it's a little higher than they wanted to go. But we're making them make a bad decision to either lose the house or go a little bit more than they wanted to go, or take a little bit less, right? So I think pushing the action, being the one that is doing the thing first, is undoubtedly, in my mind, the best way to approach these scenarios. In terms of like pushing small edges and whatnot, so I've been a part of a couple deals recently where, my clients just wanted to keep pushing. Every little edge they had, they wanted to push, right? So the buyer asked for this, like one little small thing, which was like access on a day. And my clients, even against my wishes, didn't want to give that one piece of access because they didn't have to. And I think in real estate, you have to be really, really careful while you're in these transactions about pushing every small edge that you can. So just because you can say no, ultimately that stuff always comes back to roost, and that deal ended up falling apart because you ended up having a buyer who thought they were getting screwed by the seller. The seller didn't want to work with the buyer anymore, and you end up like just having these feelings of that we're working in two separate directions. And really what a good real estate transaction should feel like is that everybody's working kind of on the same team, right? Like, I might be representing the seller, you might be representing the buyer, but we're all actually trying to get this thing to the closing table. And I think people get sometimes a little tied up in pushing every small edge they can because they heard it was a seller's market. The same thing's going to go with buyers in a buyer's market, right? Like, you have to take a step back at some point, and you can't just push every small edge that you have.